Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is curseof and welcome back to another video. It's been another hot second since I've had a video. I apologize once again. I'm sorry. I'm bad. Life is busy. That's kind of all you can do. But what I am here for is something that I usually wait a little while to do. Because right now it's kind of more speculation than anything. Obviously the format hasn't developed much at all right now. We only have one tournament finish that I know of, and a few that are currently in progress. But regardless, I am here with Terramaster once again, and we're here to do a tier list for the current format with Jinzo added to the card pool. So yeah.
Hey, happy to be here again, and happy to be the tier list guy apparently.
Yeah, you're the tier list guy. But yeah, so basically for those of you who were not here for the last tier list for whatever reason, if you weren't, I recommend checking that out because there's going to be decks we don't go as in depth with because we talked about them in the previous video and they haven't changed much. But we're basically going to hop back and forth. I'll start off here with the first deck. I'll talk about it. Terramaster can add anything else that he wants to add. Then he'll go and we'll just go ahead and alternate throughout this tier list. And to start this whole thing off, we have the god himself, we have the Moth decks, Dark Moth, Warrior Moth, and basically any other Moth deck you can come up with. Let's be honest here, Moth is broken. So we're going to go ahead and throw both of these boys right up here into the tier 1 slot. Obviously Dark Moth is the best version of the deck, just with all the consistency and everything that it has, as well as the results from previous format and this format included. And yeah, Moth is broken, never goes minus, always at least goes neutral, normally pluses by 2, super consistent, 3500 beat stick, there you go.
I mean, it's so broken that if you think about it, we had an entire 2 starter decks come out, which is technically 4 starter decks, and it still wasn't enough to power creep Moth to even tier 2. So it's going to take 200 cards, and I'm still personally not sure whether or not we'll power creep it completely off the tier list. Like, and maybe hopefully it'll move down at least a little bit. But I don't have anything to say about this.
Exactly, yeah. And I guess the one thing we should mention is, what are Moth's weaknesses? Dust Tornado and Zoma are 2 of the very prevalent ones. And what did we just get? Jinzo, and what's its attribute? Dark. Bada bing, bada boom.
Right. So in some ways, Jinzo may have only made it a little bit stronger as you take away a couple of weaknesses. So great. Thanks. Thanks.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thanks, Konami. All right. So second deck is, I believe that Blade Knight represents a deck that we had not seen much previously and did sort of mention last time, but these are the warrior decks. So I think I'm going to mostly talk about Twisted Personality Warriors.
Yes.
Since it did top the one tournament we've had so far in the Jinzo format. And what makes this deck so good, in my opinion, is that it's very good against something like Moth in the mid to late game. So because Moth is, like you said, it always at worst goes neutral, but what this deck can do is it can plus every couple of turns if you get the situation right. And how this specific deck is built is cards like Twister and Prideful Roar are used in order to get your counters instead of things like Gravekeeper's Curse. So yeah, it's a little situational, but considering everything else in the meta like Zoma and Nightmare Wheel, Twister is actually very good and very useful. So to get that one counter, and then Prideful Roar is just absolutely phenomenal, and it gives you 2 counters plus your monster runs over theirs.
Exactly, yeah, and like that's the big thing, right? Is that like this deck also has the ability to continue plussing. It's not like a one-time thing. Every now and again you're going to get a plus off of its skill, and it's a lot more aggro than all the burn decks that we had to deal with previous format. And along with that, it's the only discard option in its skill that can't be responded to by Parasite, which is absolutely phenomenal.
Yep. So it's a really good deck, like specifically for this meta, and it's what it does really well is it combines a really good control skill like Twisted Personality with a really aggressive set of monsters. So you kind of have the best of both worlds there.
Exactly, yeah. And obviously one big thing that people were mentioning for this format was spellproof Jinzo. Can't be killed by spells, can't be killed by traps because they're not going to activate on field. Well, we have a skill that's going to have 3 counters fairly often in this deck that can just easily out any problematic Jinzo. So.
Exactly.
But yeah, so where are we throwing this to?
I say we put it in tier 2.
Tier 2? Wow, you're really giving it some hype here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good enough. I mean, it proved itself. It came in first, and I'll admit I'm guilty of. I personally tried the deck since, and it's very good and it's a lot of fun to play with.
Yeah, though it did get first place, like you mentioned, in Justice tournament. By the way, we'll have Justice's Discord as well as his Twitch because he streams sometimes down in the description. But yeah, I got first place and also got top 8. And the reason that the deck had to get top 8 in first is because the top 8 match was a mirror match between the two of them. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can tell you those were my only 2 losses in that tournament, and it was very disappointing. Because I did not see it coming at all.
Yeah, no, neither did I. But, moving on here, we have an oldie here. We have the Gravekeeper Burn deck. Once again, another deck with the Twisted Personality skill. But with Jinzo coming to the format, it's definitely going to fall off a lot here with all of its primary traps and like its primary cards for the most part being completely shut down by Jinzo, and almost every single deck in the format, if not every single deck, is running a copy of Jinzo. Obviously, this deck was relying on cards like Nightmare Wheel, like Zoma, like Rite of Spirit, Dust Tornado, and all of these are completely worthless with Jinzo on the field, potentially even clogging up zones with Jinzo on the field and just never being able to be used, like Face Up Zoma or Face Up Nightmare Wheel if the monster it's equipped to disappears later on. So yeah, we're actually going to see this deck. I feel like it's still, I don't know. Potentially still Rogue.
Yeah, I would put it. I would still put it in Rogue, but it's. I mean, if it gets like no representation over like this next like month of tournaments, then we might have to drop it down. But for now, I think we shouldn't drop off a tier 2 deck completely into, trash.
Yeah.
But like you said, with the addition of Jinzo, and everybody either main decks it or at least side decks it.
Mm-hmm.
Like even I run Relinquished, and I know somebody else who's running Relinquished right now, and he's main decking Relinquished. I was main decking Relinquished, of course he is. He's main decking Jinzo. He's main decking Jinzo, and I was side decking multiple copies of Jinzo, just specifically in case somebody's still silly enough to still play this deck, since you have at least 9 traps in this deck, and if you decide to run Dust Tornado, you have more. So if Jinzo's paralyzing like about half your deck, then you're just, I mean, it was already not that hard to side against, and now it's just like incredibly easy to both main and side against, because Jinzo's a good card anyway.
Exactly. And with the Twisted Warrior deck going up in representation, it's also not looking good for this deck.
Right, because that's a direct weakness, because not only are they aggressive, but then they benefit from your burn, so good luck with that.
Exactly. But once again, moving on here, we have the Conflict Warrior deck.
Okay, well, I guess I'll talk about this one again.
Yep.
Since I haven't used it in Jinzo format yet, but I have used it a lot previously, but I'm just going to talk about, because I talked about it a lot last time, about how Jinzo impacts it. And that's really that it takes away one big weakness, like one big weakness, which was Zoma. So like if you had Gap or Hades, you would tribute your opponent's monster for them, sure, but now you've given up 2,000 life points, usually. And now that Gap or that Hades getting crashed into, or you running over a Zoma, loses you the game. So that's like such an obvious weakness where I've lost games because I didn't draw Dust Tornado and I couldn't do anything about Zoma. So that completely negates that weakness, as the build that I personally would run, I'm giving away my secrets here, but would just be like Jinzo X3 side decking into a couple of Hades maybe, just in case the opponent decided to side out all their traps or something crazy. But just because of how like heavy the meta is in traps, I'm just running 3 Jinzos and just trying to go for like, you better have Sphere Cube or Offerings or I win.
Yeah, definitely. Very, very fair. And, yeah. I think that's fair. So,
Yeah.
going off into another one of the warrior decks here. Last time you guys will realize that we put this in the rogue tier, but I also put a trash can over it during the video. This is where it belongs.
Yep, no doubt. I mean, we've tried. Me and you personally have tried to make this deck at least somewhat good, but it's just not. I'm sorry.
I love it. I really do love it. I love the skill. I love everything about the deck. But like in this current meta specifically, it's not going anywhere. It's not doing it.
It's a very fair and balanced deck in a very unfair and imbalanced meta.
Exactly.
It doesn't belong here.
But yeah, honestly, the deck hasn't really changed like at all since last format. Maybe you could try it. You could run Jinzo in it, but like even then, it's still garbage.
I mean, you can only normal summon Jinzo, and you're depending on your Gaia as your normal summon. So how are you even gonna get both of them on the board at the same time? You need 2 whole turns to do that, and you have to tribute your Gaia. Nah,
Exactly.
it's not gonna work.
Exactly. So yeah, if you guys want to know what we think about this deck, you can watch the previous video. I'll plug it. It's in the cards right up at the top right now.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to decks that I personally am hoping can be good, which is we're going to talk about Viral and Skull Servants together here as just these zombie decks. And the reason I'm hoping these can be good with Jinzo is just because of how well Jinzo can synergize with Haunted Shrine. In that Haunted Shrine, not only can you have it on the field, so if you have it on the field and your board gets cleared, you can activate Haunted Shrine, bring back a zombie, and then tribute it off for Jinzo. And then you can also use its graveyard effect after they've killed your Jinzo or before to get your tribute for Jinzo. So it has a lot of like really good potential with Jinzo, and then if you run something like Book of Life too, then you can get that 4,000 damage I always harp on. With your special summon, your tribute summon, and then your Book of Life for another special. So you can potentially have 2 really big monsters, and you can just go for game. And that's what I'm hoping the decks can kind of do, and none of that like stalled servants stuff or that deck out viral infection stuff that was happening in previous metas. But that's all. And yeah, we'll put these in rogue since they're not proven yet, but this is just what we're hoping for.
Yeah, exactly. Decks with a lot of recursion that works well with Jinzo, and yeah, I can definitely see it having some potential. Obviously, still nothing proven yet. We're very, very early format. This is kind of just speculation, but they've been good in the past. They can still be good, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So moving on here, we have one of the big decks that got some support from Jinzo here. We actually have Jinzo as basically the mascot of this deck. We have Spellproof Armor here, so I'm going to go ahead and throw that right in the tier 3 slot. The big thing with Spellproof, obviously everyone was like super hyped. Yeah, Spellproof Jinzo, we're gonna stop all your traps, and you're not going to be able to kill Jinzo with your offerings to the doomed. You're not going to be able to parasite the Jinzo. That's absolutely phenomenal. It deals with the best deck in the meta being Moth. Obviously, they cannot just remove your monsters off the field. It forces your opponent to go neutral with their skill. And, oh, thank God, they're going to go neutral. Jeez. It's the only deck that you can actually just summon all of your monsters outright on the field without having to fear anything versus Moth. And it's an amazing feeling. But sadly, if your opponent isn't playing Moth, the deck can actually struggle a lot. It does not have a good matchup against the Twisted Warriors or the Conflict Warrior deck. They have way more bigger monsters. And yeah, you might get out a Jinzo, but okay, we'll steal your Jinzo or we'll pop your Jinzo. And we just have a lot more resources, a lot more board presence, and bigger monsters. And it's good because it deals with Moth, but it's bad because everything else it doesn't.
Yeah, and I'll just make a quick point about dealing with Moth, and that is that it basically lets you play a fair game against Moth.
Yes.
So when you're neutral because your skill doesn't really allow you to plus proactively, and they're neutral since you're stopping them from plussing. So you're essentially just playing a fair game versus them having a +2 or +3, whatever ridiculous number it is, advantage on you like every game. You're just playing a fair So you're basically the best you can do, which is this. It's just go 50-50 against Moth, in my opinion.
Exactly.
And that's absolutely, like, you're literally playing the skill that is like counter your opponent's cocoon skill, and yet 50-50 is what you get out of it.
I know.
So, I mean, that's not how an anti-meta deck is supposed to work, but this is the best version of an anti-meta deck we have. And then your point on the warrior matchup is, I think you have to prepare your entire side deck for that matchup, since your main deck is your Moth counter in a way. So your entire side deck, in my opinion, needs to be dedicated to to beating anything else that comes up.
Yeah, 100%. And another big thing too, in Justice Tournament, I've seen a lot of the Moth decks were, whether Dark Moth or Warrior Moth, they were all main decking Gear Freed, so they could just run over all of the machines in Spellproof besides Jinzo. So people are ready for it. They know it's coming for their deck. They know it's the only deck that has a good matchup, and like Terramaster said, good is 50-50, but you know.
Yep, that's the best you can do right now, sadly. Okay, let's go to the Lava Golem boy here, which is going to be that pure burn deck we sort of talked about last time. But we've seen an interesting new build of it pop up in Justice's tournament, which was using Insect Neglect and a lot of the small, tiny little searcher bugs, like the pawns, and then Man-Eater bug for removal. And it used Twister's personality like every good burn deck should, and then it had burn cards like Lava Golem. So it was really like that, like a classic style burn deck. Now, it's not something I would have ever thought of, since my Lava Golem thought always goes to try to win with Swordswoman and Zoma. But it's definitely something very interesting, and it did top, unless I don't remember anything at all.
No, you're right, top 8.
Okay, and it did top, so I think it's got some potential, and that's why we're gonna put it in Rogue. But we'll have to see whether or not like players adapt to like side decking to it, or playing around Lava Golem, or like playing around not like killing your insects so much until they have something to pop your continuous spell. But let's just see how it develops.
Yeah, no, exactly. But yeah, the deck was main decking 3 copies of Golden Ladybug, 3 copies of Lava Golem, 3 copies of Man-Eater. Like, it was very, very interesting, but it actually did very, very well. And yeah, I'm sure you guys will have the deck on screen right now for you guys for your viewing pleasure. But yeah, no, very interesting, and like Terramaster said, it's seen some results. It has some potential here.
Yep. Alright, last deck.
So, for the final deck here, Terramaster has already been playing it this format. I have not in a competitive scenario, but I have tried it, and we got relinquished here. So where are we thinking about putting this one?
Oh man, I still have to put it in Rogue as like high potential, but like at the very top.
Yeah, once again.
Yeah, because like it's so close. It's almost there. Like, ah man, I would have topped if it wasn't for those 2 players both playing Twisted Warriors. Like, I even feel like it can handle conflict kind of okay. Like, you have like a 40% chance maybe against inner conflict, because like it's like Moth, right? Where if you survive their one burst of inner conflict or cocoon, whatever their skill is, and then you relinquished and you counter with that, now you've got a big advantage, whether you're trying to win by like Thousand Eyes stall and deck out, or whether you're trying to win by taking their monsters and attacking them with it. So it's all about having the hand traps usually, which is Sphere Kuribo usually, to take that first hit and be able to actually have an opportunity to counterplay. And you don't get that versus the Twisted Warriors, since you can do all that, and then they'll just use their skill to pop your relinquished.
Yeah.
And unless you've got the loop, you've got nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's the big thing. That's why, like, it still does not... You're not always going to have that loop available, and that loop is so detrimental to the deck. And along with that, having Illusionist on field, basically any way it's outed is going to continue the loop. But if Relinquish is on the field, it has to be destroyed, meaning Conflict taking it, or any of the, like, Lava Goleming it, whatever, is going to just shut down that loop. And along with that, there is still some people siding DD Crow. Some people are seeing potential in Relinquish, and a big thing with Relinquish is that, yes, it's a good deck, but it has so many cards that can be sided against it that really hinder it and hit it so hard. So if it's known to be good, it actually kind of gets worse.
Right. It's also a bricky deck by nature.
Yeah.
In that you can just draw cards that you really don't need for whatever situation you're in. Like against Cocoon or Inner Conflict, like you talked about, you don't want to relinquish early game unless you have like a solid backup plan, which is the loop usually, and even then that doesn't work if they tribute your relinquished, right? So you really don't want to relinquish early game. So if you draw like too much like Senju and relinquished and Thousand Eyes Idol or something early game, then you're kind of like in a bad spot. Like you need your traps and your stall early, and then you need your relinquished later on. So it's asking to brick kind of.
Exactly, yeah. And that's, yeah, like you said, the Moth matchup, like you really need to just like not commit like anything. But as soon as you have, like, you feel like you have enough traps or enough hand traps or whatever, and you can go ahead and say, here, parasite this monster, I should be okay, and then I can drop Relinquish. But you gotta be in that perfect scenario. And, I mean, that's just Moth, though. You always have to be in that perfect scenario.
Yeah. Another thing, we're talking about plussing and minusing. It takes so long to plus back. Like, if Moth gets a +2, it takes so long for you to get that back, because you have to discard as a cost for Relinquish deck to summon if you're using the skill, which I think you should.
Yes.
It takes you so long because you get a +1, yes, when you take their first monster, but then how are you going to get like the other one back unless you somehow reset your relinquished with like something like Double Cyclone or like Ready for Intercepting, or like the loop could give you your plus back too, since they just use a card to kill your monster and then you get another one. But like it's so hard to get that go neutral on that +2 that they have over you, and that's what makes it hard too. Because I mean, it's a game of plus minus when you think about it. You really.
Yeah, exactly. Card advantage really is so much in this game, and just Moth obviously always being able to plus more or less, and Relinquish going minus every single time you summon your boss monster is really hard. And along with that, something I found a lot with Relinquished is, yeah, the skill is phenomenal. You have to play the skill. If you're not playing the skill, I don't think you're playing Relinquished right. But it doesn't change the fact that there's a lot of times where I drop Relinquished and I say, man, really wish I could attack for game right now.
Yeah. So not only does the skill have a cost, it has a drawback that you can't attack. Now imagine if Cocoon had any of those.
Yeah.
Imagine if the cost for the Thousand Eyes spell skill was discard a card from your opponent's hand, because that's what Cocoon is. Tribute your opponent's monster. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of goes back to the fact that Relinquished is good. Yes, 100%. But it still has a fair skill. It's still a fair deck. Moth is
it would
not.
be like if Speed Duels had a ladder. I would play it on ladder for fun.
Yeah.
So like I'd go into Dueling Book right now and play it for fun, but will I ever enter it competitively in a tournament again? Probably not in like a paid tournament.
Yeah, free entry maybe.
Yeah. Free entry, we mess around a little bit.
Exactly. But yeah, that's gonna go ahead and conclude this tier list here. It's definitely looking a good bit different from our last tier list, which is really exciting considering we only got one card.
Yeah. I mean, I think Jinzo was really important to get to disrupt this meta of people running usually like 9 traps. So, I mean, I'm so glad we got him. First of all, I love Jinzo, the card.
Oh, yes.
Because it's like iconic from the anime, which I grew up watching. And then, I mean, of course, it's also such a cool card. Like, it was relevant in the TCG for years. So, I love it.
Yeah, 100%. I'm really glad it was the singular card that we did get. Now I'm just trying to find my copies.
Yeah, good luck with that, since neither me or you live in Europe.
I know, right? Oh boy. But anyway, thank you so much to all of you guys that did drop in and watch this video. And big thanks to Terramaster for once again joining me for another little tier list video here.
Yep, you're welcome, man. Anytime.
Alright, that's good to know. But yeah, so for those of you who are still chilling, maybe you didn't leave already, or maybe you just pop back here because you've seen that the tier list is complete and you just want to look at it, go check out YuGiOh Legacy, Terramaster's channel, linked in the description right below my Discord. You'll see his channel and his Discord. He does fantastic stuff. He got a new microphone 2 days ago?
Yep.
2 days ago.
Doesn't sound great.
Sounds beautiful. So yeah, please go check him out, man. He really deserves more love. He deserves more subscribers. He does fantastic stuff, and he's a fantastic guy. Anyway, though, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here, and I'm gonna stop making promises of when my next video is gonna come out. I'll show up again eventually. Peace.